it has been said that The Bold Tenant Farmer was written by a Mr. Charles Jackson, but not according to John A. Murphy, a former professor of history at University College Cork. On the 26th of June 1985, Murphy addressed a large gathering at the official opening of the Festival of West Cork in Clonakilty. In the course of his lecture, he made reference to the local ballad The Bold Tenant Farmer, correctly stating that it was originally called The Wife of the Bold Tenant Farmer, and that the words were written by Dan Og Nyan. On further investigation, we see that the ballad writer was the son of Daniel Nyan, an activist in the Irish Land League in the early 1800s. Dan Og Nyan penned his verses in praise of Daniel or Dan Walsh and his wife Mary Nee O'Brien, whose marital home was situated in the West Cork townland of Ahaliskey, near Ballinascarty, about 5 miles from Clonakilty. Ahaliskey was one of many townlands in the possession of William Bence Jones, an English-born landlord who owned a 4,000-acre estate in Cork, and who resided in Lissalan House on the banks of the Argadine River in Clonakilty. Having worked as a lawyer in London for some years, Jones moved to Ireland in 1843. Ahaliskey being at that time home to 26 families, all of whom were required to pay rent, or gaol, twice a year. Seeing that his land would be more financially viable if it was used to rear cattle and sheep, Jones started to raise his tenants' rents, and any small farmer who could not pay the required amount was simply evicted. Consequently, many were forced to emigrate, and by 1881 there were only 4 families living in Ahaliskey. A priest based in Clonakilty, Father John O'Leary, saw Jones's actions as tantamount to tyranny. Having just finished reading Jones's autobiography, A Life's Work in Ireland, published in 1880, in July 1881, O'Leary sent a damning letter to the Contemporary Review, which was soon reproduced in the Dublin Weekly Nation. Singling out Jones's treatment of Dan Walsh and his wife, Father O'Leary lambasted Jones for having increased the couple's annual rent from £33.05 to £58, a staggering £24.05 above the price fixed in Griffith's land valuation. Furthermore, said Father O'Leary, Jones was brazen enough to demand this £58 from the Walshes at the time of Dan Walsh's mother's death, just a few months ago. An underground group calling itself Snyder Rifle Bulldog Vigilance posted a number of ominous placards throughout Clonakilty, each threatening death to tenants who would dare to pay the rents required by Jones. One such poster or placard was actually pinned to the front door of Lissalan House, and a grave was dug on Jones's property. Within days, the 28 staff employed at Lissalan House downed tools and quit. Shopkeepers in West Cork refused to sell any of Jones's butter or corn, and his livestock drivers refused to handle or transport by rail and sea any of his livestock. "This is Billy Jones's doom," said another poster, and a short time later, people throughout Cork rallied to lend their support to the boycott. when a deputation representing tenants tried in vain to persuade Jones to lower his rents, armed police were placed at Lissalan to keep tenants at bay. Clearly feeling the pressure of this boycott, on the morning of the 17th of January 1881, Jones, along with his son and daughter, discreetly left West Cork for England. The London Evening Standard reporting that William Bence Jones died on the 22nd of June 1882 at his residence in Elveston Place in Kensington. Thanks to the combined efforts of the Land League, Father John O'Leary and local resistance, Dan and Mary Walsh, along with their children, managed to retain their house and land in Ahaliskey. Dan Walsh died at home at the end of April 1906, and Father John O'Leary died in Clonakilty on the 31st of October 1921. Mary Walsh, Dan's wife, who later turned the old homestead into a post office, died in early January 1932, the Irish Examiner recording that her death was met with widespread regret. Dennis Walsh, a grandson of Dan, the Bold Tenant Farmer, emigrated to Sydney, Australia, where he pursued a lucrative career in the drapery business. He returned to Ireland in 1968 and set up his own clothes shop in Washington Street, Cork City. In June 2007, a plaque was erected on the wall of the Walsh family home in Ahaliskey. The Southern Star carrying a photograph of some of Dan Walsh's descendants standing proudly beside the memorial. The sheer pluck and determination of Mary Walsh are brought to the fore in Dan Óg Nyan's rollicking ballad, the air of which is the same as that which accompanied the older bilingual ballad Agus Fágamid Siúd Maratáise, roughly translated as "And let that stand as it is." The same air was used by the Banshee poet Darby Ryan for his song The Galbally Farmer, and it also accompanied another ballad, The Limerick Rake. Apart from praising the efforts of some key players within the Land League, such as Father John O'Leary, John Dillon, and Michael Davitt, Dan Óg's ballad tells of a man who's making his way from Bandon to Clonakilty. Stopping off at Ahaliskey near Ballinascarty, he overhears an argument coming from the Walsh homestead. Prostrating himself on the ground just behind a bush, he hears Bence Jones's son, an ill-looking toad, demanding that he get his rent. At which stage the Bold Tenant Farmer's wife calls him a robber, worse than your daddy. The exchange now becoming even more heated, Jones's son accuses Dan Walsh of being too fond of drink and too involved in the pursuit of tenants' rights. And so ends the story of that fine and jaunting ballad, The Wife of the Bold Tenant Farmer. One evening up late into Bandon I strayed, and down to Clonakilty I was making me way. At Ballinascarty some time I delayed, for to wet me old whistle with porter. Well, I spat on me fingers and I picked up me stick, and up the coach road like a deer I did trip. I cared not for bailiff, landlord or old Nick, and I sang like the lark in the morning. Well, I scarcely had travelled a mile of the road when I heard a dispute in the farmer's abode. The son of the landlord, an ill-looking toad, and the wife of the Bold Tenant Farmer. He said, "What in the devil's come over you all? Not one penny of rent at each time I call, but by next October I'll settle you all, for you'll have the high road for your garden." "Ah, you robber," the bold tenant's wife she replied, "you're worse than your daddy on the other side. But the National Land League will put down your pride, for they're able to wear every storm. Oh, its branches extend to the country and town, protecting the tenants, their houses and ground. I owe you 12 months and I'll give you £1 if you clear our receipts in the morning." When you spoke of the Land League, his lips they grew pale, saying, "What good have you done but be stuck into jail? And the rent that you owe must be paid by next scale, and believe me, we'll give you no quarter. Your husband I saw in the town just last night. He was drinking and shouting for poor tenants' rights. By the month of October we'll put you to flight, to follow your friends o'er the water." "If my husband was drinking, what's that to you? I'd rather he'd drink it than give it to you. Now make up your mind, for you won't get a chew, for your old marshy land is no bargain." We all joined the Land League on last New Year's Day, and I think in my heart we're not going astray. While the clergy are with us, we'll carry the day, now marshalling all in good order. Here's to Father O'Leary, the pride of our isle. He's the boy that can stifle your ruffians in style. John Dillon McDavitt, who rank in their file. Take care you don't tread on their corns. Then I stepped out from under the bush where I lay, and as he passed by me these words he did say. "I wish to my God I was 10 miles away from the wife of the Bold Tenant Farmer." Well, I shouted hurrah, and he shouted hurroo. She showed him her back, and like lightning he flew, saying, "God save the Land League and old Ireland too." Agus fágam wéid siúd mar atá sé.